Hello, my name is Michael Humphrey, and I will be accompanying you through the Story Listeners project. If you had a chance to listen to my conversation with Dr. Elizabeth Parks, you hopefully have a sense of how listening research has informed this project. Very important concepts such as listening for the right purposes, paying attention to the teller's body and body language, responding to the teller to ensure you've heard something correctly, not judging or correcting what you hear, basically just intending to be present for another or others while they tell their story, all create a baseline for story listening. But how do you listen for story specifically? I mentioned earlier that learning to be a story listener is about understanding, practice, and strategy. In this video, I want to talk about the third element, strategy. Human beings already know a lot about story, both instinctually and intellectually. There's an ancient, highly reliable model for telling a story in an arc with 3 acts, rising tension, a climax, and resolution. Journalists have a classic model called the inverted pyramid, along with a list of elements that help us organize stories that are efficient, top-heavy, and easy to consume. So for a story listener, one of the questions you might ask yourself is, why are you listening in the first place? Often, it is to extract a story from a person or persons and present something riveting and meaningful. Another motivation is to recognize the stories and the identity of a teller in such a way that you could tell their story back to them and they would recognize it, and perhaps in ways that deepen their understanding of themselves. The one thing I will say is that Story Listeners is not meant to help people be better audience members. It is to create a group of listeners who can be present with storytellers, who bring their own life understanding to the encounter, and who understand the power a story can have for the teller as well as other listeners. To help us understand the strategies behind listening this way, I want to use a sound wave as a metaphor. Like any journalist, I wanted to know the who, what, when, where, why, and how of a story that I was assigned. As a feature writer, though, I needed a little more of a strategy to get to the depth I wanted from my listening. I started to think about story information in 3 directions. Now, when you look at a sound wave, you can see all of those directions as well. Let's start with horizontal. When I would take notes, I drew horizontal lines when I was hearing someone talk about what and when. When you read narrative theory, what and when matter a lot. Consider the narrative arc that goes back to Aristotle. What is happening, that beginning, middle, and end. What and when. Cause and effect. Something you could map on a timeline. So when I did a profile of a well-known artist and he talked to me about the pattern of his days, the kind of discipline it takes to paint multiple paintings at a time, the pattern itself was horizontal. When telling me how he went from a young art student to meeting the love of his life, who inspired his growth as an artist, there was still a what and when there. But had I just mapped the horizontal lines of his story, I would have missed some pretty great nuance. This is when I started making vertical lines in my notebook. Who and where? Who was this love of his life? Where did they meet? Where did they go? Where did they end up at this point in their lives? In the vertical, I'm far less worried about time. Yes, there still is time, of course. A clock is ticking somewhere. But in my mind and in their talk, I want to slow things down. And the best way to stay vertical, to slow down time, is to ask about details. What were you wearing the day you met? Where were you? What was the weather like? Were you inside or outside? Do you remember what you could feel in your stomach? Not all of these will get answered. But these are vertical questions because I'm not just asking them to show the what and when, but to inspect the roots of their lives, the emotions, the memories, what lies beneath the surface. Okay, so what other direction is there? Let's call it diagonal. It kind of looks like a corkscrew in my mind as well because they go somewhat vertical and somewhat horizontal. They are the how and why. How can be procedural, of course, telling us about the what and when, but also regularly tell us a great deal about who, and even sometimes where. Why does the same thing. It is part of the story that can go deep into introspection, but also leads us to think about cause and effect. So why think about it this way? When a person is talking to you, the lines are likely moving in all 3 directions. By concentrating on that truth, you can help guide the teller into richer details, more connections, and at times, deeper reflections. Also, this approach helps us highlight the most important elements of a life story. The who, meaning the identity of the teller and all the people that shape any person's narrative and sense of self. So along those lines, I will share 2 more metaphors with you. One is follow the tree. We don't have one life story in the same way a tree is not just one branch. We are anthologies of stories, vignettes, memories, senses, and more. What comes together is a self who wishes to be known, to be part of something larger. What we want to do, if presented with these leaves, is ask the why, the whens, the whos, the hows that take us down the routes to their stories. If they start at the roots, on the other hand, talking about the people, places, incidents they consider core, we want to travel toward the leaves to see how those roots have helped their lives grow through incidents and experience. This is not a neat project, nor should it be. Stories in our entertainment and news tend to be tidy, but lives don't work quite that way. So the last thought I have is listen along. This simply means going for the journey that the storyteller takes you on. You don't need to hear a neat story for you to know the narrative. Listen carefully to what they are saying, and you may hear where we're going, and if not, what you can find while you're lost. If you see chances to guide the storyteller back, gently take it. Ultimately, this is what story listening is about, to help someone experience the richness of the narratives of their own life, so that when you tell that story back to them, they recognize themselves and their stories in a deeper way.